Chapter 25, Whispers of the Archfey. The sacred grove was unlike anything Elowyn had ever seen. The air itself seemed alive, humming with ancient magic, and the trees impossibly tall, their silver-green leaves shimmering, pulsed with an ethereal glow. The deeper they travelled, the more she felt the weight of unseen eyes, watching, judging. Then, as they stepped into a great clearing of twilight blooms, the Archfey revealed themselves. A figure of impossible beauty, their forms shifting like mist, hair woven with starlight and skin like polished moonstone. Their eyes, deep, endless pools of wisdom, settled on Elowyn, pinning her in place as if seeing through the layers of her very soul. Elowyn of Elysium, the Archfey spoke, their voice neither male nor female, but something more, something eternal. You seek the seer, yet you do not understand the cost of finding him. Elowyn straightened, suppressing the shiver that ran down her spine. He holds answers I need. The Archfey regarded her silently before turning to Lyra, who had stepped forward with quiet reverence. You already know, don't you, daughter of the Vale? They mused. Lyra did her expression solemn. The seer is corrupted. A slow, sorrowful smile touched the Archfey's lips. Yes, Calum Vane has been lost to the shadows for some time now. Selene inhaled sharply, her gaze darting to Elowyn. Lost? The Archfey tilted their head, as if weighing their words. He has been tainted by a presence far older than he, one that whispers in the dark, promising power, promising freedom. We have kept him here, beneath the roots of the sacred grove, bound in enchanted chains, for his own safety and for yours. Elowyn's hands curled into fists. What presence? She demanded, though deep down she already knew. The Archfey's shimmering gaze locked onto hers. You have seen him before, haven't you? A cold dread crept up her spine. The evil god. The voice that haunted her dreams, that tempted her with power, that showed her visions of ruin and death. Elowyn's throat went dry. He is trying to use the seer. The Archfey nodded. Yes, and he is not the only one. Silence fell over the clearing. Even the whispering leaves seemed to hush in anticipation. There is a great stirring, the Archfey continued, their voice heavy with ancient sorrow. Not only in Elysium, but in all the world, the chains that once held darkness at bay are weakening. Selene's brow furrowed. What do you mean? A rare shadow passed over the Archfey's luminous face. We do not speak only of the evil god. Elowyn's breath hitched. The beasts of calamity stir. Their followers move in secrecy, gathering, whispering their masters' names. And though they remain nameless here, you know of whom we speak. She did. She had seen the signs, in the growing unrest, in the corruption spreading like a sickness across the land. And now the Archfey had confirmed her worst fears. The demon god, the mother of monsters, the beast of revelations, each one an entity of unimaginable power, sealed away in ages past. Their return would mean the end of the world as they knew it. Lyra's hands clenched. You're saying their followers are trying to free them? The Archfey gave a solemn nod. Yes, and they are succeeding. A heavy stillness settled over the group. Elowyn swallowed hard. And the seer? She asked finally. Does he still have his mind? The Archfey exhaled as if reluctant to answer. He fights, but he is weak. Elowyn met their gaze, determination flaring in her chest. Then I will help him. The Archfey studied her, something unreadable flickering across their expression. We shall see, Princess of Elysium, they murmured. We shall see. Chapter 25, Continuation, Whispers of the Past and Future. The seer's chamber lay beneath the roots of the sacred grove, hidden deep within the earth, where the magic of the Archfey bound him in place. The walls of the cavern pulsed with faint bioluminescent veins, casting shifting shadows over the figure slumped against the stone altar, Calum Vane. Once a renowned prophet, now a wretched soul, his long ashen hair clung to his face, his robes tattered, eyes glowing with the flickering remnants of his former self. His wrists were shackled with runes of sealing, and arcane chains wrapped around his chest, binding him to the altar. Yet even bound, Elowyn could feel his presence, like a beacon of fractured foresight. His head snapped up the moment she stepped forward. Elowyn. Her name came in a hoarse whisper, cracked and broken, but filled with haunting recognition. She stopped, her pulse quickening. The seer lurched forward, the chains rattling violently as he struggled against them. His face twisted between clarity and madness, his eyes burning with a sickly golden glow, the same glow she had seen in her own nightmares. You've come at last, he rasped. But too late. The bindings weaken. Elowen clenched her fists, glancing at Lyra and Selene, both standing tense at her sides. I need answers, she said. The evil god, you have seen him, haven't you? The seer let out a low, eerie laugh, his lips curling into something twisted. I have seen so much more than that. His gaze pierced through her, something ancient and knowing in those maddened eyes. I have seen you. Elowen felt the blood in her veins freeze. The seer's breath quickened, as though something unseen was clawing through his mind. His body shook violently, and for a brief moment his face contorted in agony before he spoke the words that shattered her world. Your parents made the ultimate sacrifice to bind the evil one. Elowen's breath hitched. What? The spell, it was meant to seal him away forever, to lock his voice in silence, the seer continued, his voice both urgent and broken. But the spell failed. The chains were not enough, and so, his eyes locked onto hers, burning with truth, the queen created an unwanted life. Elowen's heart pounded against her ribs. The air in the chamber seemed to thin, the walls pressing closer, suffocating her. The seer's voice dropped to a whisper, his eyes flickering between lucidity and something else. Elowen, you are not simply their daughter. You are the Black Crown, the last binding seal of the evil god. Silence. The words crashed against her like a tidal wave, tearing through the very foundation of her being. The Black Crown, the very thing she had seen in her nightmares, the crown upon her head as she brought ruin to all she loved. No, she staggered back, her breath shallow. No, that's... The seer laughed bitterly. You were never meant to be. The weight of his words threatened to crush her, but before she could even process them, he spoke again, his voice trembling with something beyond madness. You are more than a seal. His pupils dilated, as if he were seeing through time itself. You are one of the seven. Elowen froze. The seven? The beast of revelations, he whispered, his lips curling into something twisted. The monstrosity of 7 heads, each whispering prophecies of destruction. Elowen's blood turned to ice. Chapter 25 continued, The Seal's Truth. Elowen stared at the seer, her breath shallow, her body rigid as if turned to stone. One of the 7. The words hung in the air, heavier than any crown she had ever imagined bearing. She wanted to deny it, to cast away the seer's truth as delirium, but deep down she felt it, the weight of his words settling into the marrow of her bones. She had seen the monstrous thing in her nightmares. She had felt its whispers slither into her mind when she slept. The beast of revelations. 7 draconic heads whispering doom. And she... You are the seal that binds the god, the seer rasped, his voice raw from his madness, but certain in its truth. Your existence is meant to revive him. Elowen clenched her fists. Then why am I still me? The seer let out a low, eerie laugh. Because you have not yet surrendered. She flinched. You hear him, don't you? His eyes glowed with fractured knowledge, boring into her like a blade. The whispers that creep into your thoughts? The echoes of his voice that never truly leave? Her lips pressed into a thin line, her hands trembling. Yes, she heard him, always, even now. Even with her mind fortified, she could feel the weight of the god's presence, lingering like a shadow in her thoughts. He did not need to speak. His will was a constant pressure, waiting for the moment, she faltered. She hated it. The seer exhaled sharply. You cannot defeat him, Elowen, for you are him. The words hit like a hammer to her chest. You are his blood, his will, his vessel. You will never be rid of him. Her heart pounded against her ribs. No, there had to be a way. There is always a way. The chains, the heaven demand. Her mind snapped to the vision from her last encounter with the god, the moment when she had forced him to halt using the knowledge of the chains. She lifted her gaze, steel and defiance burning in her eyes. You're wrong, she said, her voice steady despite the fear twisting inside her. The seer's brow furrowed as though she had spoken something impossible. I can resist him. I already have. His breath hitched, his pupils dilating. How? She met his gaze, shoulders squared. The heaven demand. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something else. Disbelief. No, he whispered. That's... But Elowen took a step forward, her voice unwavering. I've used them before, and I will use them again. The seer laughed, shaking his head. Impossible, he murmured. The chains of heaven, The law of divine command should be beyond the reach of one who is bound to an evil god. His chains rattled as he leaned forward, eyes wide with something close to desperation. "Elowyn, what exactly are you?" Chapter 25 continued. Elowyn's hands clenched at her sides, her nails digging into her palms as the seer's words echoed in her mind. "What exactly are you?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I saw the chains," she said, her voice firm despite the weight of her revelation. "When I met Akin Tempest, the saintess, she showed them to me." The seer stiffened, his wide, fractured gaze locking onto hers. "She?" He stopped, his lips pressing into a tight line. "She showed you the price, didn't she?" Elowyn swallowed hard. Yes. She knew what it meant, what it would mean. The chains, the heaven demand, were not just a tool. They were a law, an absolute force that bound gods. But to wield such a law required a sacrifice. It demanded a price. As her mind drifted to that moment, to the words Akin had spoken in the quiet, weighty air of that sacred space, her stomach turned. A life must be offered to make the chains true. A life. A soul bound in devotion. Before Elowyn could stop it, before she could even react, Selene stepped forward. "I will do it." The words cut through the air like a blade, sharp and undeniable. Elowyn's breath caught in her throat. Sir Aldrich's hand flew to his sword. Lyra, usually so composed, jerked in alarm. "What?" Elowyn turned to her, panic flashing through her veins. "Selene, no." Selene's expression was serene, but her eyes burned with unyielding determination. "Elowyn," she said softly, stepping closer, close enough that Elowyn could see the slight tremble in her fingers. "You are the only one who can stop this." "No," Elowyn shook her head, her voice fraying at the edges. "There has to be another way." Selene smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You and I both know there isn't." The seer was silent, watching them with dark, unreadable eyes, as though witnessing something he could not bring himself to interfere with. Sir Aldrich stepped forward, his voice firm with disbelief. "This is madness," he growled. "Princess, you can't." "I won't," Elowyn cut in, her voice shaking with barely contained desperation. "Selene, I won't let you. You don't have a choice." Elowyn flinched. Selene exhaled, her voice gentle but unwavering. "If you don't use the chains, you will lose. You will lose yourself." Elowyn staggered back, her mind screaming at her to reject it. This wasn't happening. This couldn't happen. Lyra, who had been deathly silent, suddenly stepped between them, her usual mirth replaced by something cold and dangerous. "That is not happening," she hissed, her golden eyes flaring with magic. "You humans and your self-sacrificing idiocy. You think you're noble?" Her voice shook with rage. "You think Elowyn wants to rule over a grave?" Selene didn't flinch, didn't so much as blink. "I think," she said softly, "that if she doesn't, there will be nothing left." The silence that followed was deafening. Elowyn's chest tightened, her vision blurring. Selene, she was supposed to be by her side. Always. She was her shadow, her shield, her most trusted, and now she was offering herself to the chains, to her. Tears burned at the edges of Elowyn's eyes. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. Selene's expression softened, but she didn't take it back. She wouldn't. And that terrified Elowyn more than anything.